This is lecture number 1, and the title of the course is Convection Heat Transfer. That's also the title of the textbook. I teach from the books I wrote. Okay. Actually, it was the other way around. I wrote books based on what I had been teaching in my career. And again, feel free to ask questions. I begin with, in fact, one thing I teach is the meaning of the words. So, heat transfer is one way in which energy is transmitted. Energy is transmitted in several ways. Most common are work transfer. Say, a rotating shaft with torque on it transmits in steady state power from the entity that turns the crank to the entity that experiences meat grinding, you see. So that's work transfer. Very different, meaning unlike heat transfer. Now, what is the difference, you may ask? After all, you've been taught to draw a heat transfer as an arrow. We'll call it Q, proceeding, people don't say, but always from hot to cold. Now, work transfer is the rotating shaft. Here it is with the torque and angular velocity. So what's the difference between the two? You can draw both of them, can't you? The difference is that this is a mental viewing. You cannot take a picture of that arrow and of that cue. It comes from your mind. Actually, it doesn't come from your mind. It comes from the minds of very smart people a few centuries ago who said, wait a minute, heating is something that travels from hot to cold. I feel it, but you cannot draw it. This other thing, yes, you can draw the shaft or the piston in and out of the cylinder. That's work transfer. And you can feel that too if you're dumb enough to get in the way of the moving thing. But the difference is that here there is motion and configuration. This is what you draw. You see that? So, if you ask questions, you uncover stuff that's very basic that has not been questioned, not even by your professors before. And if you get into this habit of self-education and teaching yourself, you'll discover that you become happier as an engineer or as whatever you decide to do in your life. You become a one of a kind, not a sheep in the herd somewhere. Okay, so heat transfer. Heat transfer is in fact not that simple. This arrow can be happening in 3 ways. One is called conduction. That is when the hot and the cold make a direct contact. There's no motion. Just one palm against the other. Convection is the next more complicated. In convection, the two entities, they are dissimilar because of the temperature. By the way, temperature is another thing that you cannot draw, except that these days everybody knows about thermometer. So a thermometer is a device with a bulb full of mercury. It's liquid, and there's a capillary rising in a tube fixed to a plate, which is it's graded, and the warmer the place where the bulb is located, the more the liquid mercury expands into the capillary. So the liquid column rises, and from there the idea that the temperature is rising and there's a high temperature, the word associated with hotness. These are not things you can photograph here under my shoe, because the floor does have a temperature. These are the language in this case comes from the invention, from the contrivance, and that contrivance has been hammered into generation after generation to the point that people speak today words that they have no idea what they mean and where they came from. Same here. Here the temperature has fallen, and so low temperature means coldness, and on and on and on. We say, once again, invisibility is a reality, but the ignorant, everybody, not just students, think that they are seeing the truth. Well, ask yourself how clever you are. The third way of transmitting heat is by radiation. Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you. The difference between convection and conduction is that in convection, at least one of these entities, left or right, is moving. So you have a hot fluid bathing a cold body, then there will be a convective heat transfer from the hot to the cold. Movement was absent in the case of conduction. So no motion. In this case, motion or relative movement. Both conduction and convection refer to a direct contact between the two entities. And that brings up the third mode. You can have the motion, you have the two entities, except that they are not touching. So it's about, radiation is about the transfer of energy as heating or cooling from a distance. There could be something between the source and the sink, such as a gas that absorbs or re-emits or scatters. That's a complication that comes with the field of radiation. But the two entities do not make a direct contact. So, and radiation is a much older word. It existed plenty. In fact, I can give you I would say at least 2 centuries before the invention of the radio. Another radio, the word was born out of radiation, meaning things that happen from a distance without direct contact. Before Fourier, so that's Fourier. If you hear this name, you can think of Napoleon, so that's early 1800s. Before him, the the name for convection was radiation, because people did not know the difference between these two modes, but they knew that one entity was heating another entity, you see. So the original name for convection was radiation. And how did people discover the difference between between radiation and this other thing, special radiation called convection? My mother told me, don't answer a question unless you know the answer. So I posed a question, I know the answer. There is a very clever American called Benjamin Thompson. Who became so good and so famous, he became later in life Count Rumford. Rumford was the name of the little town in New Hampshire where he was born and grew up. So there's a Rumford, New Hampshire. But this fellow, Benjamin Thompson, was a military man. And during the American War of Independence, he fought on the side of the British. And of course the British lost, and he had to flee. And he fled to England, where he became a very famous military man, especially in the area or domain of logistics, which really means military engineering. And then he continued on that path, and he was hired by the let's call him King of Bavaria, to do the same thing in Bavaria, which was an independent state. Anybody has been to Munich? Nobody. When you go, yeah, there's a very nice park called the English Gardens in Munich, designed by him. And the Bavarian ruler was so impressed that he knighted him, made him a count. And Benjamin Thompson chose Rumford as his name because of his origin. By the way, Americans, being Americans, forgave him, so he later was welcomed to Boston, where he had fled from. And he left he made a fortune in life, all his money to the Rumford Foundation in Boston. But I get carried away. Rumford discovered convection because he was a bon vivant, you know. He liked to live, and he was drinking red wine. Back then, the wine was made properly. It was not that perfect. There were things still floating in the glass of red wine, and he observed that these things that were these floaters were actually moving around, starting from the spots where he was holding with a hot hand the glass. So he discovered convection, in this case natural convection, chapter 4 in this course, by looking at it and asking himself, what is this? And what was the transport of heating all the way here by motion. And yes, you can make movies these days of convection. You can do all sorts of things about it. In fact, all city life is about that movement. The carrying of this to this place, this thing about the environment, and you read about it's all convection. Most of it happens naturally. A lot of it happens because of every single one of us. And why is this convection called convection? Don't report me to the authorities, but the words of science come from these original, unusual types who ask themselves about things. And for lack of, speaking of the discovery, for lack of a new word for the new observation, those folks used existing words. And convectio in Latin means I bring to a spot. The verb is, I actually wrote it, it's written this way, the verb. But it's pronounced conveyor. Conveyor is to bring or to bring together. You get the idea, okay? So this is a Latin word. That's 2,000 years before Benjamin Thompson. And by the way, Benjamin Thompson did not call it convection, he called it radiation because that was the word at the time. From this little story, I hope you get a flavor of not only the importance, but the fun that comes from questioning. In this case, questioning the origin of what is being spoken, and especially what is being taught. Finally, for this introduction, why do we do this? Why study convection? Ask me, what's your problem, Adrian? What's your problem? You're wasting your time. There is a problem, and the problem is this. This current, invisible or imaginable as it is, would not exist without a temperature difference. And so the question is, what is the relationship between the temperature difference, I'll call it, let me draw it this way, as a temperature distribution, meaning a delta T between here and here. Yeah, so the problem is, meaning I'm answering my own question, I'm talking to myself, is what is the relationship between Q and delta T? Now, intuitively, we know that heating happens when a temperature difference happens. But what is the relationship? Is it a proportionality? Even better, what is the formula? Can I predict it? And it is from the predicting, or in the course of basically cutting to the chase, that you discover intellectual happiness. So, okay, call it the formula, all right? It doesn't have to be a mathematical thing. It might be something in your head, but if you have it, you are more powerful than other engineers. With it, you predict. So here is one of you, very, very powerful, because you predict. Unlike the remaining n-1 folks who are cursed to have to measure. Do you see the difference? If you already know the answer, you don't have to spend your life measuring stuff or searching through handbooks where the measurements are listed. You're free. Yeah, how about that? To predict is to be free. Okay, so that is the object of this particular game called convection. But what do you do with the prediction? You are not, entertaining the troops with a song or with a dance. No, you're actually creating objects called devices. So you create useful stuff. Not the beans in a sack. I'm talking about contrivances. machine elements or tricks, shortcuts, good ideas, useful ideas and devices. And you get to this bottom of the listing, once again, to the, I didn't write the word powerful, but that is what you become powerful. And by the way, maybe I asked this in the previous course, the course that I taught during the spring. What is engineering? Anybody knows?
Fixing problems.
What?
Fixing problems.
Fixing problems?
Yeah. Creating.
Meaning that the people before you made mistakes. They made the things that fell apart. And here you come and you're fixing problems.
Yeah.
Well, there are people like that who do that. But these types were imagining new problems. And in other words, avoiding failure is a big part of engineering practice. Repairing failure is part of that. But creating the object that performs on the battlefront, that is where the money is. Innovation, you hear about that. That in Latin that means coming up with something new. Novo is that new, unheard of, unseen, not imagined by anyone except one brain. And that is engineering. So, in fact, if you do you have a dictionary? Any of you? You don't? One day, maybe I'll bring my wife here to show you. And we're at home. The book that I have consulted the most often in my career is Webster's Dictionary. And every time I find an interesting word, which I ask myself, I put one of these yellow Post-it stickers. So this book speaks of the underpinnings of English language, American version, and the definition of engineering is this: is the science of useful processes and devices. So next time you hear professors here talk about scientists and engineers, or science and engineering, as if by using those two words they're demonstrating inclusiveness. No, they're demonstrating divisiveness, because engineering is a science. It is this science, without which those people who talk about pure science would have absolutely no ability to exist, because without engineering, civilization does not exist. You come from China?
Yeah.
Think about that. It's a place you could, everywhere you dig, you find something built 3,000, 2,000 years ago. It's the same in the parts where I grew up. Roman Empire. Engineering, okay? You can call it military engineering. You can call it other names, that are derogatory, like whatever, violence on the battlefront. But engineering, yes, originated from the military.